I want to start with this interesting statistic here. A few years ago, there were a couple of professors at Oxford that came out with an interesting sort of news nugget that got retweeted all over the place. They said that in the next 20 years, about 47% of the jobs that exist in the United States today could vanish due to automation and other technologies. That was over a 20-year horizon. It was kind of one of these cool things, that you kind of read it and then just move on, maybe click the like button. More interestingly, just about a year and a half ago, about a year and a half ago, in December of 2015, another study came out from the McKinsey global consulting firm, and they had a much more ominous take. They said that 45% of the activities that today a human being is paid to do can be automated or replaced with automated technologies that are currently available today. Not in 20 years, but today. I downloaded the study and I read it. I found it very interesting. And I noticed there was a caveat where they said that, we said 45, but really that number would be about 13% higher if there was one piece that we don't quite have yet, which is that if computers could understand natural language as well as people do, that would drive the figure up. That was in December of 2015. So about a year later, in December 2016, a little research team at Microsoft had a big breakthrough. They published this paper announcing that they had achieved human parity in conversational language recognition, a feat that even they believed was 5 to 10 years away. They beat all their own targets. And so I guess we're really at about 58% of tasks and activities that really are being done by people who are redundant right now. I find that fascinating. And I want to talk to you over the next few minutes about why that's happening. What are the kind of technological mega trends that are driving these types of dire predictions in kind of a bite-sized, way. So I heard you guys like numbers. I've broken it down into 5 easy-to-digest mega trends, each of which are very big, too big to ignore, but also in some ways subtle enough that you might not notice them happening if someone doesn't shake you out of your complacency and point them to you. The first megatrend is that robots today can make anything. Now, that sounds a little trite. We all know manufacturing, right? Robots are making simple things like Croc shoes and basic stuff, right? No, that's not the case. Robots can make anything. And I want to focus on 2 areas that are traditionally already thought of as declining to kind of like get things going, in a non-threatening way. Let's talk a little bit about farming and then a little bit about manufacturing. So in farming, I don't know if you've seen anything like this. This is a robot that is harvesting olives. So it approaches the tree, hugs the tree, opens this little umbrella thing, gives it a little shake, and then takes all the olives back to the farmer. This costs no hourly salary. There's no benefits or vacation time. It just does this all day long, forever, for free once you've bought the machine. I don't think there are going to be any humans picking olives ever again. Those types of machines, you can go on YouTube and you can find them for apples, for oranges, for bananas. They can tell which ones are ripe and which ones aren't. But that's, replacing, low-wage, low-skill labor, right? Not that big a deal, right? Well, this here is Bonnie Rob. Bonnie Rob is a robot about the size of a small car. And what Bonnie Rob can do is monitor how well new crop varieties are growing. Bonnie Rob can figure out whether or not they're resistant to various pests and bacteria, can determine whether we should be using more or less fertilizer or a different kind, can pick out certain weeds, and interestingly, over time, Bonnie Rob gets better at identifying which weeds are bad and which ones aren't, because Bonnie Rob, of course, is connected to all of his or her brethren, other robots just like that. This is not replacing a low-wage worker. This is replacing a crop scientist who would have been making a six-figure salary. And Bonnie Rob never takes a break, doesn't take vacation time, doesn't ask for a raise, loves his or her job. An interesting case is the story of Boeing. And I think Boeing is very representative of what we're seeing. Boeing is one of the darlings of American manufacturing, right? And you can see in this chart what has happened to the situation of employment at Boeing. And we all know there was a big financial crisis in 08, 09. There was the 9/11 attacks obviously hit the aviation industry quite hard. And you can see how the number of jobs drops and then picks back up sort of in tandem with the economy. And I've got another slide where I'll show you Boeing's production output over the same period. And you'll see that it follows largely the same curve until about November 2012, its highest point. And focus a little bit on that part of the graph. What happens after 2012? Was there a big event like 9/11 that caused production to decline or the company to do badly? No, not at all. The curve follows very nicely at first, up until about 5 years ago, and then there's a total and complete decoupling, where Boeing's production is actually up very much, up about 15%, no more than that, about 20%, but jobs are down about 10%. So we're making more, better planes with fewer people, and those jobs are never coming back. This is true across all manufacturing in America. People talk about how are we going to bring manufacturing back. These people are not paying attention. Manufacturing has come back. Manufacturing is way up in America. It's just that robots are doing it, which is why manufacturing is way up and employment in manufacturing is way down. This is a automatic, fully automated beer plant, not in America, but in Mexico, where they're supposed to have cheaper wages, so this sort of thing isn't supposed to happen. Look at how these roboticized pallet machines just drive around happily, never asking for a raise, never taking a vacation, never complaining. This is in Singapore, where this facility mass produces high-end solar panels with no people. It is a fully automated factory. I don't see any people anywhere. Maybe there are one or two, but they're not working on the assembly line. You might think, well, what about small business, right? Little mom and pops, restaurants. This is Bruno. Bruno makes pizza. Not just any pizza, but artisanal, high-end, snobby, yuppie pizza, where each ball of dough is slightly different from the others so that the shape's not quite right. And when Bruno finishes making the dough, he hands it off to Marta, who spreads the tomato sauce in just the right way so that it's not quite uniform. It's not quite perfect. It has that human touch. These are high-end, expensive pizzas. You can order them online in San Francisco. Or if you want something a little healthier, you could ask Sally, the salad robot. She can make 1,000 different salads in under a minute. She never asks for a raise or a vacation or any kind of benefits. In case you're wondering, yes, these things will come to your home as well. I just thought, lighten things up a little. This is coming to a kitchen near you. This is a company called Moly. They are launching the robotic kitchen in 2018. That's next year. 4 robotic arms. They can cook whatever you want, right through to plating it for you. And of course, they'll clean up the kitchen when they're done. How nice. So we've got high-end farm jobs, high-end manufacturing jobs, sort of medium kitchen jobs. Surely there's something that's more difficult that a robot can't do, like robots can't do brain surgery, right? Here's a robot doing surgery. Now, this robot is overseen by humans for now, but they're working on it without humans, not on humans, but humanless, supervision-free. It's being worked on. In fact, Johnson & Johnson has already rolled out a fully automated anesthesiologist, which is one of the highest paid medical professions. Now, in that case, the anesthesiologist lobby kind of kiboshed it for now, but it's coming. All of these things are coming. And so, for all our talk about manufacturing, right, okay, it's only about 9% of the economy. Maybe it's not the end of the world, right? If robots start making everything, we'll be okay, right? Same thing goes for farming. Farming has kind of been declining forever anyway, right? None of this holds a candle compared to the service sector, which we are all in. Service sector is about 80% of the economy. And, well, what's the biggest subsector within services? Turns out that it's transportation and logistics. Millions and millions of people are employed either as truck drivers or in some logistics capacity. Turns out that robots can not only make everything, they can deliver everything, and they are. This is an automated truck that has been in testing for more than a year, and it works just great. Here's a guy checking his iPad while they're on the road. You just hit the red button, and off you go. Fully automated mode, highway pilot is active. This truck doesn't need to take a break to sleep, doesn't require overtime, doesn't ask for vacation, right? Not only is it cheaper than a person, but it's actually better, right? Because now they don't have to stop every now and then to get a good night's rest, et cetera. There will be no new trucking jobs ever again, starting now, not in 10 years, right now. This is Ollie. Ollie is a bus that is being rolled out on university campuses in Florida and Nevada. Ollie has no human driver, and of course never asks, you see where I'm going with this, never asks for a break, never asks for a raise. Ollie's got peers all over the world, right? We've got self-driving buses have been rolled out in places like Finland and the Netherlands, Singapore, and in this case, this is a fleet of self-driving buses that is not in testing, but is already in use in South Korea in this case. So the other big part of logistics is ports. This is a picture of a port in Brisbane, Australia. And this is the world's first fully automated port with no employees at all. This is kind of how it works. So you pull up in your truck, and these giant red robots have no human telling them what to do. They'll go ahead and pick up the containers. They'll sort of move around, and it's very kind of a Zen-like thing. I can see you putting this on the background in a nightclub, just sort of watching them drive around. It's very soothing. But notice there are no people in these videos, right? Here's another cool angle of the same thing. A much, much bigger version of this has recently opened in China, and they're being rolled out all over the world. But this is Kiva. Kiva is a little robot that works for Amazon. Here's Kiva with his or her, let's say her. Here's Kiva with her sisters, since we know that AI is sexist, so we're going to try and counter that. So Kiva and her sisters are hanging out in an Amazon warehouse. The way Kiva works is she'll go underneath one of these sort of bookshelf things, rotate like this in a circle until she's got a little corkscrew on top that like picks it up, and then they'll zip around the warehouse, the fully automated, human-free warehouse that delivers your Amazon goods. Now, there are some people at the last step that actually take things off that shelf and put it in a box, for now. Amazon's not alone. UPS just announced that its 30 biggest distribution centers in America, which handle 60% of its volume, are going to be fully automated within a year. This is a robot waiter or waitress in China. Customers love her. She costs less than 10 grand. She never asks for a tip. And when you go to a fancy hotel, last night I ordered toothpaste to my room. I felt bad. I didn't have any US dollars, so I gave the guy a Canadian $5. He was actually really happy, so I was relieved. But, what if next time you go to a hotel, you might get this fellow, Bolter, the robot bellhop. Independently finds her way to the elevator, goes up, goes to your room, doesn't ring the doorbell, but rather calls you, phone rings, hey, I'm here. Did you get everything you needed? Yes, no. Never asks for a tip. So robots can move things around. They can make things. But what's really interesting is they can also create new things. And Susan talked a little bit about that. I want to touch on some of those same themes a little. This here is a rock band called Z Machines. I actually thought their music was pretty good. This is them having a concert in Japan. Here's another shot. You can see Z Machines is a duo or a duet. Between the two of them, they have 22 arms and 78 fingers. They can play music that no human could ever play. It's far too difficult. I found their album on iTunes. For what it's worth, people like it. It's got 4.5 stars on average. That's pretty good. I mean, that's a crowdsourced review. People seem to be happy. If you want to go maybe see a play, how could they cut the costs of actors? Who's the most expensive actor? It's the lead. Here's a shot of a current production of Kafka's Metamorphosis, Android edition, they call it. And of course, the lead is played by this fellow, who is remarkably competitively priced at $0 per show. Very interesting stuff. Here's an article that I found on Forbes. Forbes is a magazine website. Probably heard about it. Just a normal looking article about, Tesla's, some company has its whatever quarterly review. Millions of these articles come out every day, right? But check out who the author is. I just want you to draw your attention. There's a fellow whose first name is Narrative and last name is Science. And you could follow this author, become friends with him or her. Of course, Narrative Science, you know where I'm going with this, is a machine. But you say, well, these articles, who cares? A little mistake is made, no big deal. Not so. The same company that makes these articles, parent company is called Quill, they also release equity research reports that are put out by large banks that are SEC compliant, that identify ahead of time, hey, this company, it's got this line of business is doing well, this one's a problem, et cetera. The reports look like this, and they charge millions of dollars, and banks are putting these out to their clients instead of paying somebody $200,000-300,000 to be an equity research analyst. If you go, this is a really interesting experiment you could do. If you go on Google News and search for the following phrase in quote marks, the phrase is, quote, "This story was generated by automated insights," close quote. Just try it. I got 27,000 articles from a diverse, I guess it's too small to read, but I'll read you some of the, in green it says where it is, right? So we got Winnipeg Free Press, Chattanooga Times Free Press, Detroit Daily News, Chicago Tribune, Venture Beat. This one I love. The Art of Algorithms, How Automation is Affecting Creativity. Written by a robot. Wow. At least they have a sense of irony. This is a novel that was co-written by a robot. It was actually shortlisted for a literary prize where the people reading the submissions had no idea who the author was. And out of the 1,500 submissions, 11 were either authored or co-authored by a robot. This one actually made it through screening. I checked it out on Amazon Japan. Looks like people like it. 4.5 stars on average. Not too bad. I don't read Japanese, so I can't comment. This here is a Baltic apple pie. It's got rave reviews. It's got a pork layer combining ingredients never before heard of. It's one of the many recipes in this book, Cognitive Cooking with Chef Watson, a machine that created hundreds of original recipes never been tried before, delicious, unique. 4.5 stars on Amazon. People love it. Here are just a few quick samples of the type of food. This is some sort of lobster thing. These are some quiches. You got some Austrian grilled asparagus. Not too bad. These are all novel things, new flavors never been tried before. So robots can create new things. They can also act on that information. They can make decisions for us, big, important decisions. So imagine, a robot smarter than the smartest human, right? That if you took that robot and pointed it at a domain of knowledge, very, very quickly it could become better than anyone on earth at that domain. Why wouldn't you put that person in charge or use that as a tool? People call it artificial intelligence. I personally don't love that term. I like to think of it more as like super intelligence because, it's better than just regular intelligence. But semantics aside, we're talking about a subset of AI, right, that is using AI plus machine learning plus big data equals this incredible thing. And so it's affecting every industry, every walk of life. I'm going to focus on three that I know well from my world, I guess: finance, also law, and marketing. So let's start with finance. This man, his name is Ray Dalio. He runs the world's largest hedge fund. Now, for those who know, who may not be aware, a hedge fund is something a little bit less restricted and generally much more complex than a normal sort of mutual fund or normal trading company. They're allowed to use options, derivatives, and any kind of instrument that they want to do really complex trades. They typically hire people with highly advanced math degrees to figure out some of these strategies. So Ray learned about AI and decided to give it a try and see if maybe he could replace like all of his traders with a machine. And so this was the result. Pure Alpha was the name of what they unleashed. And you can see Pure Alpha didn't do so well at the beginning. The black lines are how the overall hedge fund market did on average. And the light blue is how the algorithm performed. And you can see towards the end that it just becomes absolutely no contest. The algorithm wins every time. These are like 300,000-400,000 a year jobs. But what's really interesting is that Ray didn't stop there. He said, okay, not only am I going to automate, because my problem, I run this huge hedge fund, I just want more free time. Like I don't want to worry about who's trading, but what I really want to do is not have to worry about like running this company. Like what if I could automate like the CEO position? Like seriously. And so they did. And they're currently rolling out a robot that basically runs the company, more or less. It takes these various inputs. You don't need to read everything that it says, but basically the inputs on the left are people rating each other. Staff give each other feedback every day on these little apps that they have on their phones, and then the algorithm takes all that input and then combines it with a sort of schema that's based on Ray's book that outlines his business philosophy, and then the algorithm decides who gets a raise, who gets fired, who gets reassigned. And this is a CEO that doesn't demand a big fat bonus. So it's a pretty good deal for the shareholders. This slide is a bit of a mouthful, but I just want you to notice how many logos are on it. This is a current snapshot of the landscape for artificial intelligence in the legal field. Now, I know a little bit about this because I'm invested in one of the companies on this slide, BlueJay, on the middle right. And so I'll tell you a little bit about how BlueJay works and then how some of the other pieces here work. So if you have a complex tax question, oftentimes there's no easy answer. Your lawyer, your tax lawyer, has to go and read through potentially hundreds of precedents, pre-existing decisions on a topic to see what's the most likely outcome. And so typically the way a law firm would do this is senior partner would talk to the client, shake their hand, understand the problem, yada, yada, and then delegate to one or maybe two junior associates who would then spend a couple of weeks reading everything and putting together a memo that synthesizes and says, okay, look, here are some similar cases, here are some that are somewhat similar but maybe not, who knows, maybe they apply, maybe they don't. On balance, we think the best strategy is this, but you should be aware of this. It's a very nuanced, sophisticated analysis, right? Well, with BlueJay, you can just skip that step. The partner would just input the question into the machine, and the machine would come back and say, oh yeah, 75% likely the answer is this, but you should be aware of these factors. Here are the various precedents that are relevant. Here are the ones where we're not quite sure. Exactly the same. That's what BlueJay does on the tax planning side. Another really interesting area is e-discovery. So in litigation, discovery is the most expensive step. It costs about 70% of any lawsuit. And so discovery means it's that part where the opposing parties are going through each other's documents and emails and stuff to see if there's something incriminating, basically. And it's a whole complex process where only your lawyer can see and can't tell you what's not relevant, yada, yada, yada. Forget it. That's done in 2 seconds by an algorithm. It immediately identifies what's relevant and what isn't. Same thing for mergers and acquisitions. Typically, when you first graduate law school, one of your early jobs, if you're going into the corporate world, you're going to go to Wall Street or Bay Street, and you're going to do what's called due diligence, which in that world means okay, mega company A is acquiring mega company B, so someone's got to read 10 zillion contracts that mega company B has ever signed ever with anyone, just to make sure there's like nothing there, you know, but maybe they signed something that gives away the whole ship, or who knows, right? Well, it turns out that there are several competing software platforms that do this faster, better, and of course, much cheaper. And now they don't do the entire job. They'll identify like a very small sliver where it's not sure, so you can just read, you know, that little sliver. You're taking a job that would have taken months by people who are paid about 150 grand to 200 grand a year. You're compressing it down to, you know, an hour-ish. So that's the legal landscape. Marketing is also quite interesting. This here is a fellow named Albert. Albert is a marketing machine, you could say. Some of the things that Albert can do, Albert can, I guess I have to say his own, on his own, Albert can first figure out who to target. Who is the demographic? Oh, you told me it was women aged 35 to 45, but I'm not so sure. I'm going to look myself and decide who your target market is. Then I'm going to experiment and actually figure out which channels to use to market. Then I'm going to actually execute on that, go ahead and do the media buy, adapt whatever marketing you've given to me for each channel and make all the changes, et cetera. Then I'm going to take the data the very next day and see how that did and do an even better job the next day. Albert's being used by companies like Harley-Davidson, who now claims that about 40% of their sales are thanks to this. I don't know if this is true. This is from their website, but these are some of the outcomes that they probably cut it in half, right? Little sales puffery, but nevertheless, increased sales, right? Much better return on investment, much higher conversions, etc. So robots can make decisions and act on them. The last megatrend I want to talk about just a little is this idea of everything being on demand all the time. And this is kind of a whole big thing, and I'm just going to touch on it lightly in the interest of time. But you may have noticed how everything seems to be available real quick these days, and there's a lot that goes into that. One of the components of everything being on demand is 3D printing. You may have heard of this technology that allows you to very quickly make some little simple object like a paper clip or a little piece of art that you can hold in your hand. Have any of you guys seen this? Right? And so people kind of thought, well, it's not a big deal, it's not cost competitive, it's too slow, but it's not. Here's a house that was 3D printed in China. This house was built in an afternoon, cost about 3 grand. And okay, all of these houses look, you know, pretty, I mean, it's not, I don't know if you'd want to live in this house, but it's not quite finished, by the way. That's as far as a 3D printer can get you. So for now, you still need people to finish it off. This is a picture of a factory owned by a company called Prescient in Colorado. They do something a little more interesting. They use a combination of robots and some of these other technologies to very, very quickly build large buildings, like hotels. And so they recently built a Hyatt, just as one example. They built a Hyatt hotel. The structure for the project normally would have taken about 80 people, and 80 people could have done it in about 18 weeks. That would be before. Prescient was able to do it with 29 people, so fewer than half, and they were able to do it in 6 weeks, 1/3 the time. The Hyatt I'm talking about is in the middle bottom row, and those are some of their other projects from their website. These things can happen really quick, and they can be highly customized. And you know, I'm just using buildings as an example of this everything being on demand all the time. But when everything's on demand, everything can also be customized. And so I think what we're moving from is a world where something customized costs 10 times more to where something customized will cost like 25% more. Do you know what I mean? Like a custom shirt should not be 6 times more because it's not a big deal because robots are doing everything anyway. So those are some mega trends. You might have some concerns, maybe about becoming obsolete. No? Don't worry. I want to also talk about how normal people like us can actually use some of these to our advantage, right? And to actually have them on your side instead of working against you. So I want to talk about how you can crush it in tomorrow's economy using some of these tools. Because these are amazing gifts, right? And so you can use them to your advantage. I want to talk about 4 sort of ideas for how you can think about some of these really cool mega trends and how you can use them to your advantage in the short and medium term, right? If you think about the long term, it's not as useful. If we think about the next 5, 10 years, there's a ton of opportunity that we can exploit. So the first one is I think you can actually work less, you know? It's kind of a controversial thing to say, which is why I put a little asterisk on it. I think you could work less on certain things. Certain types of tasks and activities you should maybe just completely stop doing. Remember the big, scary number that I started with, right? 45% plus maybe another 13%, right, of jobs that'll just be wiped out. Well, that's not quite right. So that number is what happens when you average it out. But when you really drill down, and what the McKinsey report talked about, is that there are very few jobs where 100% of that entire job will just be made redundant. Like there's usually some core activity that is not yet automatable, and just a large part is. And so what I think is important to think about is what are those activities in our lives that we can think about, you know, moving towards either automating away or just not doing anymore, because a machine can do it better. You know, a great example that I love from my Shark Tank world is this. This was a company that we met on Shark Tank called Velocity Signs. Have you ever driven around and seen somebody who just stands there on the road with like a sign? That's just all they do all day long. Like, hey, come to the store. And like that's their entire life. Like they just do this all day long, right? And to me, like that, there could be no better metaphor of like a total waste of time. Like seriously, like you're adding no value, right? Like this box can do it better than you. And like to me, I would hate to think of myself as like, this is me, you know, it's all I'm doing. And so I think we all have like some sign spinning in our lives, you know, that we could automate away. And what's interesting is that what counts as ridiculous that a human should do this is quickly expanding. Like even a few years ago, you couldn't well, maybe this you could have done before. But, you know, if you've gone to a McDonald's lately, you know, have any of you used one of these? I actually like it. Like it's pretty good. You know, you don't feel like the employees staring you down. You could, if you need a minute to digest the menu, you're not embarrassed. You know, maybe you don't like mustard and you're, you know, afraid. Just like it's easy. So like, why? To me, there's a dignity involved in stepping away from tasks that no longer need us. And so this chart shows a breakdown from that same report about, you know, what is the rough percentage of tasks that can generally be automated. This is across industries. If you open the report, you can actually drill down into each industry. Unfortunately, insurance wasn't broken out. Otherwise, I would have put it up there, but it was folded in. But you know, these are the kind of areas, right? So maybe about 20% of stakeholder interaction activity can be automated. The jobs are still going to be there, but they're getting more meaningful because we can delegate more to these machines. And I think the second thing that we can think about, and it sounds like really trite and cliched, and I'm sorry about that, but we could really do just about everything better, like a lot better. You know, as I read about superintelligence and these tools, one of the reasons I don't like calling it artificial intelligence is because it sort of separates you from it. The reality is if you employ it, it makes you super intelligent. Like that's your tool. Like I'm allowed to use Wikipedia on my phone and take credit for like knowledge that I didn't have 10 minutes ago. Why can't I take credit for like deploying like a super machine? Like it's totally fine, right? And so, you know, what would happen if your clients knew that you had this like super brain at your disposal that's constantly thinking about like ways to serve them better and give them a better rate or the right coverage or whatever it is, or identifying when they might need a new product or service? Or what if you knew with much greater certainty that you're not recommending the wrong thing because your little super brain said beep, 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 you know, maybe this is a better product over here. Like that's good. And frankly, it's an opportunity with huge potential. I think just about everybody across most, if not all industries, can think about ways to use these tools to vastly increase their output and or the quality of their work and or their relationships, right? Because what if you could call clients like not at random or less at random and in a much more targeted way, right? These are some of the big opportunities. It's already true to a large extent. Elon Musk famously said that we're all already cyborgs. It's kind of true, right? We're already using a lot of tools that expand our intelligence into like a big network, and this is the next logical step. The third idea I want to leave you with is picking up on that, which is that you could connect, and in fact you need to connect more meaningfully with people, whether it's your existing clients or your target clients. And it's really hard because there's so much information out there. It's kind of nuts. This chart shows what I'm talking about. This is the number of news stories published per year. It starts in the late 1970s, and you could kind of figure out, when the internet comes in, and then the last spike towards the end is some of these machines that are generating so much content that it's just impossible to keep up, right? So in this environment, I don't know about you, but I'm not sending a generic newsletter ever again, ever. That's just a total waste of time, because most people have a zillion of them already. They're already reading a zillion things. And what's interesting is that even this massive number, it's going up to 80 million by the top line there. Even that is a vastly lowballed estimate, because this is what's called, this is what's visible. But what marketing agencies are cluing into now is that there's a much, much bigger iceberg underneath, which is what they now call dark social. Dark social is the part of social networking and sharing that you don't see because it's not done publicly. So for example, if I see the cool chair in the hotel lobby, I just texted that picture to a few of my friends and said, hey, check this out. I didn't post that anywhere, but that counts, right? If you're selling big chairs, maybe you want to know how many people are doing that, but you can't. That's why they call it dark social. It used to be about 70% of the internet. It's up to about 84, it's climbing. And so not only is there a lot of noise out there, but also people are already ignoring most of that noise, and they're finding ways to just connect directly because it's just too much of a headache to try and parse everything. You can't, right? And so how do you both cut through the noise and get to someone's top of mind, right? And so there are two sort of traditional answers to this, and I think they both have some merit and worth thinking about. One is this idea of influencers. You might have heard of this. It's this idea of sort of celebrities who aren't mega celebrities, but they're kind of like mini celebrities, people who have just maybe a lot of Instagram followers, etc., right? The Kardashian family are probably the leaders in this, because what are they really famous for other than just being famous? I'm not really sure, right? So here's a campaign by Kendall Jenner, who is promoting some makeup thing. This to me is already kind of old news. I find it somewhat interesting because it is a way to cut through the noise, right? Because people, maybe they will read something if there's a sort of somebody that they identify with who they follow. But what's even more interesting is who are the influences in your own life? When I think about that, yeah, there are some celebrities who I respect, etc., and maybe they influence me. They're also just my friends. My friends are my influencers, right? And so more and more, really smart marketers are picking up on that. And they're saying, we're going to run an influencer campaign, not with people like the Kardashians, but just with average people. So here's one of my favorites. This is a campaign by another cosmetics company called Glossier. And what they did is they said, anyone can be an influencer. Anyone who wants to can create their little page here and talk about which cosmetics they like. And their friends can check it out if they want to or not. And it's just sort of one-on-one, no big deal. Easy peasy, and they're doing tremendously well. By the way, influencer marketing is doubling year over year, every year, because people need to cut through the noise. So I think what's interesting here is that anyone can be an influencer, and when you sort of think that way, you can start thinking about how to communicate more meaningfully than before. The other traditional answer is hyper-targeting, which I hope you'll be hearing more about when you go to Google, etc. I think it's really, really important certainly in the insurance business, right? To be able to say, all right, I've got a book of a couple thousand clients. how do I know which ones I should be reaching out to? How do I know which ones are about to have a midlife crisis and are going to need a new car insurance, or whose kids are about to turn a certain age? I mean, those are the easy ones. All you need to know is their age. But what if your machine could tell you that their grocery bill just halved and their hotel bill just spiked, and maybe that predicts, divorce, or who knows? I mean, I don't know yet because I'm not the artificial intelligence. But someone's going to figure that out, and whoever does is going to do really, really well, right? Because now, not only do you have a relationship with your broker that is trusted, which is already there before, but now it's even more valuable, right? And also, that person's not just spinning a sign, but doing like something much more meaningful. This is just a really basic example of hyper-targeting. This is like hyper-targeting 101 on Facebook. If you just put a sponsored post, Facebook lets you choose this kind of stuff. By the way, this is like already, yesterday's technology. Like hyper-targeting today is way crazier than this. It's more along the lines of, your grocery bill fell or whatever. The last idea I want to leave you with is that it's okay to try everything. And this is really important because in the past, some of the newest, coolest technologies were really not available to most normal people. And it was like, okay, you could learn about it academically, but who cares? Like, if I learn that there's a new fighter jet, like, okay, and like, it's not going to change your life or my life. But this idea of everything being on demand, it's not just about 3D printing, it's about everything is available as a service with very little upfront cost, et cetera. And I just have 3 really quick examples that I see in a lot of the companies that I work with. I have a small venture capital company that I run. And so one of them on the bottom left is called Upwork. Upwork is a company that it's like an eBay for hourly services. So, I want to try this new marketing experiment, but it's going to take I'm going to need a whole staff for this. I'm going to need to hire 3 people. Well, maybe I don't want to hire them because I haven't tried it yet. Right? Well, what if you could hire them just for a few days or a few hours? No big deal, right? You can experiment without breaking the bank. Kickstarter is more for physical products, but it's incredibly popular. It's this idea that if you want to launch a new product, usually there's this chicken and egg problem, right? Which is, well, you don't really know for sure if people want this, and also where are you going to raise the capital because you're a startup and you haven't proven it. Kickstarter says, no, just throw it up on the website, see if people want to buy it. If enough, you set the minimum at whatever it is, 1,000 or however many people want to try this idea. And if you get enough pre-orders, great, there's your capital. Now you can go buy it, no problem. Risk-free experimentation, right? Maybe your margins might be a little lower at first, but innovation is not closed to you just because you don't have millions of dollars. It's actually very, very exciting and transformative. And the last one is interesting because people think that robots are very expensive. There are many companies that offer various financing solutions that turn those technologies into more like what you're used to with an employee. So you either pay per hour or it's like a salary. You could fire them and then they're gone. You don't even have to fork up, whatever it would cost, which isn't even that much to begin with. Some of the coolest robots in this presentation are like less than $100,000. But even that, you don't have to pay up front. You can just pay as you go. So that's what I wanted you guys to think about. 5 big trends. Everything is changing, right? Robots can make anything. They can deliver everything. They can create new things. They can make decisions, big decisions. And everything is available on demand. And for us, these can be transformative in terms of they could really just wipe us all out, or they could be amazing opportunities if we can run with them and exploit them. And I think a few ways of doing that are, to try working less on certain activities that are no longer need you, and just recognizing that and moving on, right? Doing other things much, much better, as trite as it sounds, but it's true. Connecting more meaningfully because you have to, because if you don't, you're going to get drowned. And finally, just trying things, just experimenting and letting go, because you don't have to risk all that much to do so. That's my talk. I'm really grateful for the opportunity. My name is Alex Kenji. If you can look me up on pretty much any social network.